Greetings and salutations to our fine podcast audience. Ed, Nathan, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
It's a good day, and I want to point this out as we are speaking, as we're filming this, we are just past a monumental moment in Atlanta sports history
Oh.
that I knew I would have to bring up, especially for Nathan's benefit.
Yeah.
The big Hawks fan
Yeah.
at the table.
Yeah.
is
Well, I like
celebrating.
talking about birds.
We
learned that in the previous podcast.
especially Hawks.
These birds, I'm very big. Yeah, man.
What a
second
win,
time,
man.
Second time we've made it to the Eastern Conference Final in Atlanta franchise.
That's
when we
right,
were the
Atlanta.
St. Louis Hawks,
We actually
won.
We
a
actually
finals.
won back
Look
in
at
the
you
day.
pulling out the history. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
yeah.
won once, like 1960.
68 or
That's what I think.
and then they said, "Yeah, we got to leave St. Louis."
As everyone who's ever been to St. Louis, we must get
I
out
don't know
of
if you've ever
this.
been to St. Louis in summertime. It's the muggiest place on the planet because it's right there by the river. Memphis is a similar kind of way.
Yeah.
All
I don't
that
know. I don't-
muggy. Ugh.
I've been to St. Louis, but I was a kid and I don't remember. I think it was summertime.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'll say we
I
went
took
with-
you during the great Mark McGuire,
Yeah,
Sammy Sosa
I remember that.
Cheating scandal.
Cheating
Yeah.
scandal, yes. That particular baseball cheating scandal.
Yes.
It wasn't a scandal
we
at the
went
moment.
to St. Louis and then we went to Chicago.
We
watched
watched
them
both
both.
of them play in their own stadiums, and they both hit home runs while we
cool.
were there.
They were hitting home runs
Yeah.
in their sleep.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
so as we drop this podcast, the Hawks will be in the midst of the Eastern Conference Finals.
I'm calling.
So,
I'm gonna call it out.
You calling us?
It's gonna be Hawks in 6. I'm
Oh,
calling it
in
out.
6.
Hawks in 6. I don't think we're
Wow.
going to game.
So
7.
with
Here,
this-
if we go to game 7, I think we lose. That's what I'm gonna say.
think
If
so?
we go to game 7,
I don't think
we
so.
lose.
I think if we can stretch it out, we will win no matter what.
Okay. Well, I hope so. I hope we win no
the
matter
danger,
what. but-
I think the danger for the Bucks is if they start rolling, we may not be able to stop them.
Oh yes, I think that's true. I think yes. I think it is completely possible. It might be the Bucks in 4, but I don't know. I'm gonna say Hawks in 6. I believe that's the Atlanta Hawks.
There you go.
Thing. We believe. So I believe. I got good hopes for us this.
So since we're recording 2 of these in one day, we probably won't be able to talk about the actual results for
No,
another
because
3 weeks.
then we'll be predicting the NBA Finals.
That's right.
Yes.
and
And
we'll be behind.
I'll go ahead and call this. I think it's going to be the Hawks and the Suns in the finals, and I think the Suns are going to win.
All
I don't
right.
want them to. I think the Suns at this point, it would be shocking. I think if it's the Suns and the Bucks in the finals, I think the Suns are taking the whole thing, which I'm actually, even if it's not going to be my Hawks, I want it to be the Suns. They're another young team.
Yep.
Super excited.
Well, not all of them.
Well, no, Chris Paul's got COVID, and
Yeah, Chris Paul has been old.
yes, he's old. He's old, but he's their old guy. He's their Lou Williams, just better than Lou Williams.
Oh, yeah.
just better than
Oh,
Lou Williams.
yeah, you think?
yeah.
Okay. All right. So today, before we get into questions, which we have some good ones, where I wanted to bring a headline that I've been dying to bring in here ever since I heard it.
Okay.
It's not going to be new for you guys because I know you've both heard it.
Okay.
It's one of those headlines that I think everybody who's heard it probably wants some pastors to talk about it.
Oh.
Oh wow.
See, look at that setup.
Oh,
How am I
wow.
doing, guys? Am I
That's
doing all
awesome.
right?
Good.
Sounds like you've had some time to work on it.
I heard it several weeks ago, and I
Okay.
thought to myself, yeah, we're going to have to talk about
People
this
want
one.
pastors to talk.
Here it is.
All
Y'all
right,
ready?
here we go. I'm ready. Let's do it.
I may ask this before we get into it. Is there a bird involved in this?
No, there's animals involved.
Okay. All right. Go
Oh,
ahead.
there's animals.
There's animals involved, but
Let's
not
see what
birds.
this could be.
Okay, here we go. A lobster diver in Cape Cod
I
says...
do know this.
See, you know
I
this.
know
I don't
this.
know it from this.
A lobster diver in Cape Cod says a humpback whale scooped him up and spat him out.
Oh, I did hear this one.
See, I knew you did. Because everybody
And
wants to talk to us about that. Like,
Jonah,
Jonah
and
and the
the
whale.
whole
Jonah.
yeah.
Yes. So, do
It
you
ain't,
know...
it ain't the same thing.
Let me just go through the details.
Jonah wasn't a lobster, so I think we can just.
That's true. So I'll throw the details out for those of you that haven't heard this. This guy in Massachusetts, he's a lobster diver. He's down on the. Apparently, you go down to the bottom and like 40 feet deep, and you with scuba gear on, and you gather these lobsters. I thought it was just nets, but obviously this guy's diving for them. So he's down on the bottom of the ocean, and all
Don't
of a
they
sudden,
have traps? Isn't that how
That's
you
what
catch
I
lobsters?
thought,
Well,
too.
they-
What I mean is, I think they have to go down and
they're getting the
clean out the
traps.
trap.
Well, I heard somebody talk about it, and what he was doing was not anything with the traps. It's something else that they do.
okay.
okay. Well, the story
He
didn't
wasn't
say.
baiting the traps nor getting
Okay.
things out of the traps.
Okay.
Okay. So long story short, he says all of a sudden he gets scooped, and there's witnesses to this. He gets scooped up into the mouth of a humpback whale, and he gets caught not quite going down the
Because
throat.
the way they eat is
Yep.
they take the water and it filters out through
That's
the
right.
and then they keep the fish.
In fact, there's an interesting little stat in this story. See if I can find it. But they basically
this was my humpback.
that was your impression. Your impression.
I just thought
was a
that-
good one.
That was stupid.
But I think it says they ingest about 10 SUVs worth of water at one time.
Sure.
And then
Wow.
filter out the water, and then whatever's in there they eat. But this guy gets stuck in the mouth, and then all of a sudden the humpback whale comes to the surface, shakes him out, and just spits him like a few feet away. And the guys in the boat with the guy, they actually see this happen. They said they saw the humpback whale come out, they see him fly out of the mouth, and great news, he comes away pretty much uninjured. Mm-hmm. So, does this have implications biblically, fellas?
No.
Because that's what everybody wants to know.
No.
Jonah was in a whale or a big fish.
You know what would be interesting to talk
days.
about with Jonah, which we'll get into some things to blow people away.
Yeah.
Is Jonah a parable or a narrative?
Yeah.
Is Jonah a parable or is it a narrative?
Yeah.
Good question, and there is no answer to that.
No.
There's-
Well, and
Well, I have an answer.
you have an answer to the question.
well, there. That's the answer. There.
But yes, it's not the same answer I've had my whole life.
yeah. Well,
And I could be convinced on the other one, I'm sure.
another interesting theory that a lot of people may not know is that there are some scholars that believe the story of Jonah is not Jonah going into the whale, living there for 3 days, and then being spit out. That they believe Jonah may have died and was resurrected.
Well, that's because if you really went into the belly of a whale because of the way it digests, it would have killed you.
Yes. And this was interesting because I found a little factoid in the story. The humpback whales have such a small esophagus that it would have been almost impossible for him to fit all the way down the whale's throat. So now that has nothing to do with the story because
No.
we don't know it was even a whale.
Well, we know for sure the Bible doesn't say a whale.
it
right.
doesn't.
The Bible
It says
says
big
God
fish.
prepared a fish.
Yes.
Well, and I think it's, I don't know. How seriously are we taking this before I say what I'm going to say? Or
You
do
say
want me to
whatever you
move-
want
Do you just
to.
want me to move on? What I was going to say is, I think it's an important thing when you read the Bible. There are things that matter that they're historically true, and then there are things that don't matter if they're historically true. And so the story, when you say the thing of is it a parable or is it not, there's questions around that with Job as well. That
Right.
Job,
Oh, yeah,
Job, a lot of people believe are plays is a play because of the way it goes, and because it's in particular the way that conversations are had, where
That's
people
right.
speak in entire stanzas,
That's right.
but regardless, and
Yeah, I don't have any friends that could say some of the things that guy said, those guys said to Job without me going, hold on a second.
yes.
That's right.
Well, and God speaks very formally in stand. I mean, it's just it is certainly everyone agrees it's written as a play. Whether that means it is a play or not doesn't. You know what I'm saying? It's written in this very poetic stanza kind of thing. Regardless, and I think we get down to this. We talked about this before with something else, and I can't remember what. But things can be true and not literally true.
Absolutely.
And so Jesus references Jonah. And so a lot of people say, well, that must mean Jesus believed he was real. Well, no, we don't. That doesn't mean, because
I have referenced the Wizard of Oz in messages.
Exactly.
Because what
I
Jesus
do not
said,
believe there was a real Wizard of Oz.
because yes, what Jesus says is like Jonah was in the belly of the
right.
whale for 3 days, the Son of Man will be, all of that, he's making an analogy, and it'd be the same way of saying anything like "there's no place like home,"
Right.
saying it like that and referencing a character, or saying like Darth Vader turned out to be Luke. You don't then go, oh well, Nathan thinks Darth Vader. Now, at one point in my life, I might have thought Star Wars was
those were
real
good
history.
days, weren't they?
Yeah, but my point to that is,
Yeah.
and we know this even within his.
Here's a point of trivia. Did you know Darth Vader is actually a language for dark father?
Yes.
I did not know.
But that doesn't mean anything, because that is just a strange coincidence.
Oh, you don't think he wrote it that way?
Oh, well, 100% he didn't, and I'll just tell this. George Lucas, you can come at me for this one.
Uh-oh.
But I'm just saying this. We have a lot of proof. He has now since come back out and been like,
George Lucas, if you're watching, hey,
I'll just say this.
hey.
There's a high likelihood George Lucas is watching this, because the things he chooses to respond to are bizarre to me.
bizarre.
But this might be the thing he
That
responds
would be
to.
incredible. To
Yes.
me.
Would.
He now has come out and been like, oh, I've had this whole thing planned out from the beginning. But we have drafts of Empire Strikes Back where Darth Vader tries to kill Luke Skywalker, never mentions him being his father. It's a way later edition that's brought in by another, by actually a female writer who I don't believe has credit on the script at the end, but she's the one that was.
That's not unusual either.
Yeah. Anyway,
No.
I may have that part wrong.
You're not
but
saying a guy would take credit for something a woman actually did.
Never.
Never.
No.
Regardless, I think even within our current things, one of my favorite recent movies is the Steve Jobs biopic, the Aaron Sorkin Steve Jobs biopic. That whole thing is riddled with inconsistencies, and intentionally riddled with inconsistencies, because certain things. Because if you haven't seen it, the movie is structured basically on 3 different days of Steve Jobs' life where he's rolling out these different products. And there are conversations that are had that historically could not have been had on those days. Sure. But they are pointing to a bigger truth about not just Steve Jobs. The movie's not about Steve Jobs. It's about the humanity and this idea of I care more about ambition and success than I do about people. That truth is true and is an important truth to be discussed. And the same is true. There are certain things in the Bible that we know were not meant to be literally true. And certainly the poems we know are not meant to be literally true. But there is truth about God and humanity.
Which is why people need to be careful every time they quote something from a psalm as if God is saying that himself. It's a poem.
Yes.
And it's meant to describe something, but it's not necessarily describing theology.
Well, I mean, there's contradictory stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And even things that the psalmist or the writer of the psalm puts in the mouth of God is not meant to be. Sometimes it's the psalmist going, I wish God would do this, or God would feel this way. It's communicating. The one thing we can always know about the Psalms is it's communicating to us the way we can approach God. If I'm angry, if I'm depressed, if I'm hurt, if I'm anxious, all those times are ways. And here are ways I can approach God, and God's big enough to handle all of that. So anyway, all of that to say about Jonah.
I don't think there's anything biblical about this story.
Yes, that goes to that. So get rid of it, Jason.
We're done with that. Glad we cleared that up for everybody. No, I just thought
that was interesting.
It was very
A lot of people have had interesting questions about that. You know, just the whole possibility of somebody being swallowed by a whale. Okay, sure.
Was that ever a question, though, for people that
I don't know.
that
Maybe
whales
it was.
could swallow a person?
Maybe it was. In fact,
Maybe I grew up with
didn't-
the story of Jonah, so that was never a question.
I didn't read all the way to the end of the story, but I do remember as I skimmed through it, this is not the first time this has happened.
That's what I got up
I was going
asking.
to say, in my time as an adult, this is not the first time this has
It's
happened.
just a cool story to be able to tell.
Exactly.
I got swallowed by a whale.
Yeah.
I guess he technically didn't swallow him, though, from the
No,
story.
they said he couldn't because his esophagus was too small. He just got in his mouth, and just like they said, if you ever get an insect in your mouth and you just spit
Right.
it out, that's what happened. The whale went, ew, I don't want that, and just
Right.
spit him right out. So,
Right.
Which
Makes
is what
sense.
normally humpback whales do if they
Yeah,
eat
they
people.
don't. That's right.
They're just looking for some fish. They don't
Exactly.
want to.
That
So,
don't taste right.
that's right. Okay. On to our question.
Hair in this cake.
I didn't need that image. All right. On to the questions. And we have 2 today. And, okay, we got 2. That's all I'm going to say about that. I was going to say,
Also about humpback whales.
I'm not gonna comment on the questions.
Where does Star...
Jason was going somewhere that I was going to go, no.
One of the questions is, where does Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, starring humpback whales, fit in your list of Star Trek?
Wow, I had forgotten
Wow.
about that movie.
That was a good one right
That
there.
was
That's
a
done.
movie with whales in it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
humpback whales.
In San Francisco in the 1990s.
Yes.
No, earlier than that,
80s?
1980s, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
No.
Almost positive. But I may be wrong.
We'll look it up.
Yeah.
Later.
Later. No,
Producer Joel, look up Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. When did it happen?
Tell us at the end because we're going to get on to the questions.
All right.
Question number 1. Here we go. Listener wants to know, I have been a Christian for as long as I can remember and have never had a time when I turned away from Christ. I was baptized as a child and as an adult, but just to reaffirm my faith and to follow Christ's command, but not as a new status as a Christian. Without a pivotal, life-changing experience or a specific moment in my life to point to and say, this is when I became a Christian, am I considered born again, as Jesus told Nicodemus that we needed to be in order to enter heaven? So boiling the question down, this person says, I've never had
Yes.
one of those experiences where I changed, or they would say changed from non-Christian to a Christian. So they want to know, am I considered in that category of being born again? So, Ed, quick.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Should we move on, or we want to talk about this?
I'm sure we should probably do.
Honestly,
Exposition, it may be required.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it. So your question, because that's probably, I don't know, that's my experience. I got to think that's got to be mostly your
Well,
experience as well,
too.
both growing up in
It's
church.
certainly my wife's experience.
Yeah, and so the question of baptized when I was a kid, not as an infant, but when I was a child, my girls were just asking me, and I believe I was about to turn 8. It's what I believe, because it was
Okay.
It was at 90. Was it 98? The 97-98
It was
season.
98. It was 98.
and it would have been in January. So that's
It was
just
the
before.
day the Atlanta Falcons played the Minnesota Vikings
Yes.
in the famous NFC Championship, where we won in overtime and go to the
Right.
Super Bowl.
That's how I keep it in my head.
That
That's
was the day Nathan was
January
baptized.
'98. Sometime January '98.
Isn't that great? You remember that kind of stuff?
I remember it specific. We had it on tape. We came home and we watched
This
it.
is how I remember the day that I was married. Magic Johnson had to play center in a playoff game, and they won without Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Though Magic was actually the point guard and won Rookie of the Year, but he played center that night, scored 40-something points, and they beat
As he
Philly.
was wont to do.
So, your experience.
So my experience the same way. I grew up. I never had, I don't know, because people have lots of different meaning around terminology. I never had what I think most people would refer to as a conversion
yeah.
experience, where as if there was a point in my life where I didn't believe in God, or I was really wayward from.
That's right.
I had sinned as a child. I don't mean that, but what I mean was my life had not turned wayward. And then suddenly it became a realization to me, I need to turn my life to. It was a lot of small decisions over time, and eventually it came to a point where I said, I'm going to follow Jesus. Now, since that point, there have been times where the terminology we use for anyone who's a disciple of Jesus, someone's feet are pointed towards Jesus. There have been many times in my life, for a good amount of time, that my feet have been turned away from Jesus. Sure. But I have always turned my feet back towards Jesus. And each one of those turning back towards Jesus did not require me to be baptized again, because, and maybe that's the discussion. And my guess is your experience is roughly the same as that.
Yeah, I was 12, and I did the old traditional walk the aisle at the end of a service. The pastor, stands me up in front of everybody and made a confession of faith, and the church I was in, you better get to the water fast.
Yeah.
Right.
So they took me right away and baptized me right then and there, and But again, even that was something that I had talked to my parents about.
Right.
We had sort of worked through. We had said, okay, well, on this day, you're going to go and you're going to get baptized, and that was my experience. What I was thinking as I read this person's question, and I want to say to this person, whoever wrote this into us, I know you're not intending to do this, but I think what you've done is you've started with a premise that is flatly unbiblical. I'm not saying you meant to do that, but what you're basically saying is that there must be some sort of experience or change on my part that then makes my conversion somehow real versus a false kind of conversion. And I want to point you back to that same chapter where Jesus is talking to Nicodemus, and he says, this is a work of the Spirit.
Right.
The Spirit blows where it will. You don't know how it works. You don't know when it's coming, when it's going. He's the one doing the work. And when we come at this and say, well, if I don't have an experience, or I don't have an emotion, or I don't have a pivotal time in my life where I changed from non-Christian to Christian, then I haven't done something right in order to get God to be on my side. That is a really not biblical way of looking at salvation.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
And so I would say to you, your position with God is something that God has done, not you. And all you've done is agreed with him, and just and like Nathan said, you've turned your feet toward him and said, I want to follow him. Yeah. And the process of making you into what God wants you to be is a lifelong journey that the Spirit and you cooperate together, and you're gonna be doing that till the day you die. So that's what born again is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, completely.
So that's what I would say.
And, you know, I don't think Jesus' analogy or his figure of speech of born again is supposed to mean that, you know, because the truth is, let's just take the first time you were born. You don't remember that experience either.
That's right.
But it certainly did happen.
And you really had nothing to do with it.
You
either.
had nothing to do with it then, and you can't recall the moment you got born, but you know it happened, and you see the results of it. And for me, when I talk about born again in my life, I know now that I am born again because my life is drastically different than it would have been because I didn't have that experience you all had. I had been adult enough. It was clear to me and everybody else there was a trajectory my life was on that clearly was not heading the way my life has turned out. Now, did my born-againness happen at the moment I decided? I don't really know at the moment I was born. Was it at the moment I became under so much conviction that I couldn't sleep? That's not what I would say, because I have screwed up a lot after that. I still had a lot of problems, and other people weren't sure I was even a Christian yet.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But I knew I was trying to get my life in the right direction. It just took a long time because I had so many things in my life wrong because I had messed up for so long. The hope of every Christian parent and the hope of God is that children would not remember the experience of coming to God in, you know, and of knowing, it would have been drastic if I'd have stayed on the path I was at 9 years old if I hadn't given my life over, because at that point, the choice is, for most kids at that age, it's the logical choice.
That's right.
It's the choice to make. And not like you were afraid of going to hell. It's just the trajectory. You've been taught about Jesus. It makes sense that you would follow Jesus.
But I would also say this, and this it's not a other side of the argument, but I will take up for there is a value to having the moment where you go under the water and come back out,
100%.
because
I think baptism is that moment.
that's what I'm going is. I think that's the reason God gave it to us, is because it is a moment where I then feel and experience, and other people do as well, the experience of a rebirth. Now again, the water is not magic. It is not what makes me a Christian, but it is just like the communion elements give me a tangible way of connecting with the body and blood of Jesus, which saves me. I am connected with Jesus in his death, burial, and resurrection, and it is a moment that I can take with me and go, there was my day.
Yeah, for me it has always been, even when I was messing up after that, because when I became convinced I needed to change, and I had became convinced the way I wanted to try was to follow Jesus. I was soon baptized after that.
Yeah.
Messed up a lot after that. But at every time I messed up, I could point back mentally, and the Spirit helped me do it and go, no. I remember this is a path I want to be on, and I'm not turning around.
And it's a reminder of who you are.
This is a reminder of
I have
who
a
I
new
am.
identity. I am born again, and it is proof of that moment when I submitted myself to
That's
baptism.
why I think both of those, communion and baptism, are alike in that they become tangible. Communion is a weekly reminder, but baptism is that initiation reminder that I remember when it happened. I remembered making the decision to do it. And when I came out, I was totally drenched. I'm never going to forget where I was. I'm never going to forget at least a few of the people that were there. I know who was there. I know what was said all around that. And it is the moment I decided this is my path in life. And even when I get off and I go, I'm doubt, I know that's who I am.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the thing you said is huge about. It's almost the conversation we were having. You were having a little earlier about baptism. Is ultimately, it's about me. It's not about what God has done for me, right?
That's right.
God has already done what He's done
Yeah.
for me. God has reconciled me. It's whether I choose to come into that baptism. But baptism is also, and you use this term initiation, which I think is huge, is also about the body of believers. That when I am being baptized, as Paul would say, you get baptized into Christ,
Yes.
and that in Christ is also language he uses for the church, the
Yes.
body of Christ, that I am being baptized into this new family. The way that I try to communicate it to my girls is I often use the term, because we have adopted girls, we use the language a lot of you can get adopted into God's family, because that's the language Paul uses.
It is.
Yeah.
Adoption to sonship, that there's a way we get adopted, and baptism is like the adoption ceremony. It's the moment where I say, because and we use the term marriage ceremony a lot with the baptism, but this really is very similar to the adoption. My girls were in my home for a year and a half before they got adopted into our family. And I know a lot of adoptive parents have what's referred to as a gotcha day, which is like the day that the legal papers got signed. We don't have that. I honestly could not tell you now the day my girls got legally adopted. I can't. It's in January, but I can't tell you what the day is. But I know the day they moved into my home, because that's the day that the relationship for us really began. And that's what we often even say sometimes. People think of baptism as the end, and sometimes we say baptism is the beginning. The truth is your relationship with God it's ongoing, because you just may have a relationship with God where you're strangers. That's still a relational orientation in your thing. And there's a time where even before you get baptized, you turn your feet towards Jesus and your relationship begins. But there is, as you said, a moment when I say, I'm going under the water and I'm going to live out the story of death, burial, and resurrection. That is something I now have to live every day. Being born again is not... And Jesus didn't mean this, in fact, because it's not a one-time experience.
That's right.
Because Nicodemus takes that to mean, well, how do I go back in my mom's womb? She's dead. Do I bring her up? I'm an old man. What am I going to do with this? And Jesus is like, idiot. This is clear. I'm not actually talking about a physical birth. He's also not talking about a one-time experience. I remember one person said that if you've only had one conversion experience over 30 years of your entire walk with Jesus, you might start questioning your relationship, because, and I think all of us have had this, not every day, but every so often, I regularly have Jesus go, wow, you have misunderstood me, and you need to repent of your thinking and turn back to me. And it's not a conversion like my salvation was gone and any of that, but it is me re-entering into this. And so the baptism part of it is, and this is how we say it to our girls, you and God have to make a decision about you and God. I can't make that decision for you, but when you do, you're right now, you're in my earthly family forever. You have to decide whether you want to be in God's family. And when you choose to, your baptism is a moment you don't just say to God, you say to everyone else in the church, we're brothers and sisters. You have the right to speak into my life. You have the right to hold me accountable. When I stop showing up to things, I expect you to come talk to me. All of those kind of things that none of us in a very individualistic society like very much. I much prefer baptism being a transaction between me and God that purchases it, and God goes, that was just a part of what was going on. And so,
well, if it was meant to be private, then God would have given us a private ceremony. Baptism is not private at all.
No.
Can't do it for myself. Must have somebody do it to me.
That's right.
Yes.
It's meant to be a communal kind of experience.
That's right.
So, okay. Good stuff. I enjoyed that conversation. Hopefully we'll enjoy this next one.
We will. I don't know if everybody else
That's
will.
right. Here we go. Second question for today, and it'll be our final one. Do animals go to heaven when they die? And if not, what would God have you say to a child who's grieving the loss of a pet?
All right, so two separate questions.
Two questions.
What do I say to a kid who's grieving a pet?
Yeah.
And do animals
go to heaven? I've answered this in a sermon at one time. It was one of those sermons where
you asked
it's like
for it or
top
something.
question. Yeah, you asked for it, or FAQ, or one of this types of.
I think we can know for sure there are animals in heaven.
Yes, that we know.
God loves his creation. This planet is not going away.
No.
God is making a new earth.
Yeah, let's be clear about that. We get this idea of there's earth and then there's heaven and we're going up there. No, God is coming to bring the new creation and redeem this.
God always created earth to be a place for him to commune with humans. He is going to have his way.
And let's be clear, in the story that, we're supposed to look to in Genesis for how God wanted things, before sin corrupted his creation, there was animals. And so we have every indication that in the new heaven or the new earth that everything will be as it was in the beginning, and animals were there from the beginning. So,
Well, and God loves all of his creation.
Yep.
And I think it's important. I have this conversation frequently with my daughters about all kinds of stuff. And then I actually heard, which made me feel so super wise, I heard Dallas Willard say almost the same thing.
Did you?
And I didn't realize he had said it. It made me feel so good. His version of it is obviously much more clever than mine. But I always said to my girls,
And probably less words, because everything Dallas said was in a very few words.
yes, the
But
phrase
they were all packed with meaning.
The phrase we always say to our girls is, "You can't love things; you can only love people." Because and everyone says, and they will come at you if you say, "Oh, I love that food." You can't love food; you can only
It
love.
is one of the most repeated things Nathan's daughters say to Papa. Papa, you can't love a hamburger.
Because
watch me, honey.
Because what love means is that you will the good, meaning you want what you are willing to. And the way I say it to them, because they don't understand what to will something. Most of us don't understand what to will. It means you want it and you work for it. I will want and I will work for what's best for this thing. And then the way Dallas said it, which I thought was so clever, he goes, "No one loves chocolate cake. They want to eat chocolate cake."
That's right.
He goes, "You don't sit there and go, oh, I want what's best for this chocolate. I will sit here and admire this chocolate." You want to consume it. And that is a different thing. So here it comes to, you can love animals because you can want what's best for animals. But it's important for us, and I think this I know upsets many people, to understand that what is best for an animal is not the same that was what is best for a human. And that God did create a created order of things, and humans sit at the top of the created order. And so, does God love animals? God loves animals. God loves plants and nature and all the things. And I can love this planet. I can want what's best for this
I'm
planet.
supposed to.
Right, and to take
We're
care
stewards
of
of this planet.
Right. But I have to understand the proper order of those things. So when I've answered this question for students of, do animals go to heaven? There will be animals in heaven. This idea, though, that we have that, my little Sparky and I are going to continue a
reunited.
relationship may be a misunderstanding of my current relationship with Sparky. I may have a different, the way the psychologists would use it is an anthropomorphize. I have put human-like qualities on this animal. Once again, I can love this animal without treating it as if it's a human.
Yeah.
And so, will I be in heaven with animals? Yes. Will it be hard for me to tell whether this is Sparky or another border collie? Maybe.
Well, what we know for sure is even relationships like marriage, Jesus makes clear those relational bonds won't be the same.
They're
Right.
different. Yes, right.
No.
They'll be in their redeemed state.
They'll be in their redeemed state. That mean I'm not going to know my wife? It doesn't mean that at all, but it just means the relationships won't be the same. So I always just say to people, I don't have enough information from God to know if Sparky will be in heaven. I know there are animals in heaven. I know for sure about people. That's clear. There are individual souls and bodies of people in heaven. That I have enough information for. If I get there and find out Sparky's there, and my dogs that I knew growing up they're there.
Okay.
And some of them were really evil dogs, and they didn't make it. Okay, and I liked them, but they were actually tricking me because there were demons in them. I don't know. There's not enough information for me to know that.
Yes.
Yes.
But that's the thing. See, that what I just did where I go and they're demon dogs. See, some people don't want to do that. But if a dog has a capability of going there and they're individual, God, by his nature, I know his choice, they must have the choice to do the other too.
great.
Well,
you
and
know,
that's why
I'm just saying, if that's the choice you want, you got to give the dog
You gotta
the same
give it both
choice.
ways. That's right. You can't have it both ways.
Well, and I know we walk this line, and I'm not even, you may not know this listening to this, but we're aware because of the way that conversations around animals and certainly pets go in our society. This is kind of a tricky conversation for us.
It is.
Because we know people
Oh,
are...
I know there will be more people upset about this and on many things
Than
that
the conversation we just had about the baptism and eternal salvation of
Right.
a person.
Yes.
And this is why I think it's important for us to understand it is not unloving to say that an animal doesn't have a soul. That is not because I am
right.
love. You know what's not best for an animal is to treat it like it's a person. That animal has different needs than a human being has.
Yeah.
Animals have different needs than a human being has. And
So what do you tell a child? Because
Well,
I can't talk about anthropomorphization
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
to a child. So what do I say who's grieving?
Yeah.
Have you? I know you've had animals in your home. You've had animals die. What have you said to? What age were your girls at when that happened?
They were probably too young to get into the minutia of it, to be honest. I mean, I don't remember having a serious conversation about the cat that we had that died with my girls. Now, we've since gotten animals that once they do pass, my kids will probably be grown by then. So I don't know if I'm the best. I have not had the opportunity to have this conversation with my children. So
I have not had to have. Oh no, that's actually not true. I do think one of my daughters asked. They know we're not going to have pets, and that's just our thing. And certainly pets in the home.
Yeah.
That's once again just
Okay, you can go ahead and send those questions in. Why is Nathan not going to have pets for his daughters?
That's
I know
right.
some of you all just think he
you're
just
hurting those
abused it.
children.
Well, they're very upset about it. And I've told them,
they-
if you're older and you want one, and they've told me, because I'm terrified of snakes, we're going to have snakes in our home. And I said, well, then you'll have to come visit me at my home, but or put me in a home, which they may do. So, but regardless, we had a conversation, and they asked because our neighbor had a dog that died. And they said, do dogs go to heaven? And I said,
All of them.
yeah.
There's a movie about it.
I actually think I did say that, and my wife said
Here is
they don't know what you
Here's a theological treaty on dogs in heaven.
But I think what I told them was almost what I said here, which is there will be animals in heaven, but
right.
that dog doesn't have a soul. We named that dog Sparky.
Yeah.
Like we named those things that and it's okay for you to be sad
Mm-hmm.
that this dog is
Well, and
there.
if they do have a soul, expect to have a conversation when you get there and you say, hey, Sparky, and he goes, never my name, was never my name.
My name is Rufus, and it has been since the moment my mama gave birth to me.
I have always taken you as a trial in my life.
That's right. You've just been punishing me. Stop putting me in sweaters.
But I would have said, back to what you were
I
asking.
told them it's okay to be sad.
Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity, and whoever asked this question, I think it's a good opportunity to help your child learn about grief
Yes,
in
that's
that moment.
exactly right.
in a way that can prepare them for the ultimate grief that they're going to experience in their life when they do have a person in their life die. You can help them with those emotions and help them feel the sadness, because it is a loss. I don't take anything away from someone who loses a pet, because that is a
Sure.
tough loss.
Yep.
Because like you said, you love that
You love that
pet.
animal.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you should feel something.
should
I
feel
personally
that.
do think you should feel something
Yes.
that you
Absolutely.
that when you lose a pet.
I mean,
that is a conversation I would have. Life is this is again way too much to say depending on the age of the child. Life is a series of losses.
It
I
is.
will invest myself in things that ultimately I cannot hold too tightly to,
Yeah.
because things in this world are not intended to be permanent,
Mm-hmm.
including us. So I will love them, firmly give myself completely to them. When they go, I will hurt. Thankfully, we have a God who came and entered into that with us, and so he can understand it. You can talk to God about all of this. He won't think it's trivial you're talking to him about how much you are pained over your dog. He won't be mad about it.
No.
He will understand it. He will grieve with you. He will be there to walk through it with you. But you do need to understand, life is not a series of wins approaching all the way till we step up to all the ultimate win and we go to heaven. Life is a series of losses, and it's losing your life. It's giving away your control. It's giving. It's always. So
And
I know that again has to be translated to whatever age your child is.
Exactly. And I don't think it's violation to, if the child really wants to know, am I going to see my dog again? I'm not saying you lie to the kid and just say, absolutely, he'll be there. But you can say, I'm not sure,
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
but maybe so.
Yeah.
And we look forward to that. But one thing I do know is that when we're where we're going, when we're in the new heaven and the new earth, then God's going to make all this pain go away.
Yes.
Everything's going to be exactly the way it's supposed to be. And yes, we will have animals, and we will enjoy his creation and help give them a vision to look forward to.
All the good in this life will be finally firmly complete, and all loss will be over.
And see,
all
when
loss will be
and
done.
here's the other thing: you talk about life being a series of losses. Part of what God intends for us to, how He intends for us to approach that loss is for it to cause us to long for the new
Yes,
creation.
that's right.
So every time we lose, whether it's a child's pet or a parent that we lose,
Right.
and we will all lose our parents at some point, is to say, but you know what? A day is coming.
That's right.
When this pain, that this loss, this separation that I feel will be done away with. He will wipe every tear from your eye, and everything will be right again. All wrongs will be made right. Let's look forward to that. And that's a great thing to teach a child.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's
well, and I just
exactly
want to
right.
affirm the thing you said that's huge. And I do actually think I said this to my kids of, I don't know is a great answer for your
Yeah, it
kids
is.
in lots of different ways, in lots of different areas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially if you don't know. But even if you're just slightly uncertain, to tell them, you know, I don't know. Here's the thing I do know.
Exactly.
Here's the thing I do. Or here's what I think, but I don't know. And teaching your kids, it's okay for us to disagree on something. You think Sparky's going to be in heaven. I don't know.
Okay.
But here's what we know. I don't know. There's nothing that makes this a big central issue. But here's what we always do know. God loved this animal.
Mm-hmm.
God loves you. God's okay with you being sad. But we can always hope in the fact that one day all the sadness will be gone. Like, I think that part of it is huge.
Yep.
And I think it's huge for parents. It's hard. I mean, all of us know that. It's hard when your kids look at you and want a question. You want to always have an answer.
Sure.
But sometimes the better answer, even if you think you're pretty certain, but there's nothing that makes it, it's okay for them to know uncertainty is a part of life.
Well,
Absolutely.
And to be clear, we can't be certain that, and I mean, so
Yeah.
just to say to the person who really loves their animal and believes they have a soul, I can't be certain you are wrong.
That's right.
I absolutely cannot. My original, when I first answered, was, I don't have enough information to answer about your animal. I know there are animals in heaven.
Yeah.
Is it your particular animal? I don't know. I don't know that. I have plenty of it. I have all the answers I need about humans. I have
Right.
almost no information from anybody who's been to heaven about your animal. Jesus doesn't mention it. No writer in the Bible mentions any of these kind of things. They do mention animals in heaven. So it's completely okay to say, honey, we really love Sparky. I know there are animals in heaven, and I know God cares about you, and we want to be with him. And in heaven, everything's going to be perfect. There'll be no more loss. There'll be no more pain. But even now, God is with us in this.
Yeah.
That's the kind of, but I wouldn't try to enforce
And I would encourage,
anything.
back to sort of something you said, Nathan, I just want to throw this out because I think it's so important for a parent to hear, because I had to learn this the hard way. It really is okay for you to not have all the answers for your kids.
Yeah.
And it is okay for you to show weakness and confusion and all of those things in front of your kids. You have no idea how much of a teacher that is as your competence is. And I've learned that over the years. And the reason I bring this up, because I just had a conversation with my senior daughter who's about to go away to college. And I had this conversation. I said, honey, I don't need to tell you this, but I have not been the perfect dad. I really messed up in some ways, and I know you know that. We don't have to go over those. And I just want you to know I did my best, and I want you to learn from those mistakes as much as you learn from the stuff that I got right.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, it was one of the best conversations that I probably have had in the 18 years that I've had my daughter. And so if you get stuck and you feel like, oh, my kids asked me a question, if I don't have an answer, I'm going to look like a bad parent. You're not. You're going to look like a human parent, somebody they can relate to, and honestly, somebody they can respect. So,
Well, and like everybody else in grief, trying to get the person to jump out of grief by giving them something is,
Yeah.
and I know you want to because you love your kid and you'd like to give an answer that suddenly is going to make them go back to being happy. Grief is an experience you need to help them go through because they are going to go through it.
they are.
And it's better for the parent to help them go through it. So
That's right.
I think that's great.
Yep. Okay. Good stuff. That was better than I thought it would go.
well,
I do want to say,
if people were continuing to listen after we sort of
After I
you
said
know,
I don't want pets and people, I just want to say this, because I've said this on the virtual lobby. No one's come at me yet, but in case you're upset that I don't want pets, I don't eat meat, and I bet you do, so maybe I'm better than you. Am I better than you?
Just
I don't know.
wow.
He just threw down.
I'm
on
just going
that.
to throw it
Okay.
out, so we don't know.
All right.
That's okay.
Joel,
I don't do it for
Joel
animal
has an
reasons.
answer, Joel.
Oh, Joel's got me an answer for what?
19
Oh, he's
Star
bringing it
Trek.
back. This is
Star
back from the
Trek.
beginning.
What year was it? 86.
86.
You
So
were right.
once again, I was right. Am I better than you?
The whole thing has gotten really judgy here.
Yes.
Yes,
It's got-
I'm not trying to
it's
judge
got
you.
We
really-
will leave that
I'm
for
not
another
trying to judge
podcast on another day, maybe
Just come
next
at
week.
me.
I fully admit I was wrong.
I want all the smoke, so bring it at me.
All right.
Let's go.
So we will see you next week with another headline and 2 more questions. So tune in next week, and maybe we'll do even better. See ya.
Bye.